Good morning, everybody. Bruchim Habayim. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to start off this video by saying that I try as much as I can to make most of my videos appealing to a general audience, even if they are studies in religious texts. I try to make them applicable to anybody from any religion. Now we're going to be talking about particularly Jewish laws and customs, which again, there's nothing wrong per se with the things that we're going to discuss with anybody practicing this, but it might not be as interesting to someone outside of the Jewish community, although it might be interesting in the sense of learning about another religion's practices. So I just wanted to preface with that, although I still, of course, encourage everyone to watch the video. So right now, today is the 11th day of the haomer. We talked about this a few days ago, and I wanted to talk about some of the customs of this time. And the dilemma that I have is, should I go and explain the basics of what sefiras haomer is, what these 49 days counting the haomer are, or really get into what I wanted to talk about, which are particular customs and practices about this time. And so I guess, the simple way to do it is to very quickly go over what this season is. In the book of Leviticus, the Bible tells us that we are to count 50 days from, it says, the day after Mimochras HaShabbos. Outside of the Jewish world, there's a debate. Outside of the traditional rabbinical Jewish world, there's a debate as to what that is. Within our community, there is no debate, and I would say it's clear even biblically from the book of Joshua, chapter 2, that this is the intention and the meaning of the scripture. And I've even had Christian clergy say that they agree with me, that it makes sense the way that's being taught here. The word Shabbos, we know, generally means the Sabbath, but the word Sabbath does not necessarily have to mean the seventh day Sabbath, but it also means really any of the Jewish holidays where we also refrain from malacha, and so from certain types of labors that are prohibited. Not all of the labors that are prohibited on the Sabbath are prohibited on other holidays, but most of them are. But in any event, without getting into the whole argument between the Sadducees and the Pharisees of when this count begins, and of course which day of the week Pentecost, Shavuos, falls, we're just going to basically say like this, that we count 49 days from the second day of Passover until Shavuos, which falls out now the way that our calendar works on the 6th day of Sivan. It doesn't really have to be, meaning every other holiday is linked to a particular day on the calendar. Passover, 15th day of Nisan, and Sukkot is the 15th day of Tishrei, and so forth. But Shavuos always falls on the 6th day of Sivan, but it could be, and we celebrate it outside of the Holy Land, the 6th and 7th day of Sivan, but it could be the 4th or the 5th day of Sivan. Depends on, if the way the calendar is set up. But we always set up the calendar in this way, that Nisan has 30 days and ER has 29 days, and that's why theoretically Nisan could have had 29 days and Sivan could have had 29 days, which would have meant that Shavuos would fall, I guess later it would fall on the 7th, or if Sivan also had if ER also had 30 days, it could fall on the 5th. I don't think it could fall on the 4th. I don't know why I said that. it could be the 5th, 6th, or 7th, but the way it falls out with our set calendar, and I believe that was how it was through much of the ancient times, but not necessarily so, is that it falls on the 6th of Sivan, but it's the day that Shavuos falls is the 50th day, meaning we count 49 days, and then the 50th day is Shavuos. And that's liturgically every day of the Omer we count. And on the onset of the day, according to Jewish tradition, is the night. We see that in the book of Genesis, and it was evening, and it was morning, a second day, a third day, whatever it was in the account of creation in Genesis. So essentially, that's what we're talking about here, is that we have these 49 days that we count liturgically. Every night after the evening service, we actually recite a blessing, a benediction over the count each night. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, the King of the universe, who made us holy with his commandments, sanctified us with his commandments, and commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. And then we count. Today is, like we said, it also says they should be 7 perfect weeks. So we count not only the days, but the weeks. It says Sheva Shavuos Tispor, you should count 7 weeks. And so the way that we liturgically count, like for example, last night we would say today is 11 days, which are 1 week and 4 days of the Omer. And obviously, if you're Orthodox Jewish, you understand this already, and I'm sorry to have to explain this. Of course, we do this liturgically in Hebrew, but now I'm going to get into some of and this is how we count. Now, probably most famous of the customs of the Omer is the morning customs, Mourning. This is because, according to legend, the students of Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died during this season. Other explanations for mourning are much later in history. Rabbi Akiva lived, in ancient times, after the second temple was destroyed. So we're talking about, I guess, around the year 150, 175, thereabout, in the Common Era, 200, something around that time in history. He was Rabbi Shimon's teacher, so maybe a little, or around the year 100, I think. And the legend is that he rose from obscurity and ignorance, being illiterate, until he was 40 years old, until he dedicated himself to Torah study and became the greatest leader of his generation. Amassed, like we said, 24,000 disciples, but then went through and he was the leader of the generation, and then a plague struck that wiped out, particularly during this time of the year, his 24,000 students, and then he had to start again with 5 students, and that's where really the Jewish religion and the rabbinical tradition was able to continue to exist, thanks to those 5 students. And so that's the history of this, and there's discussion as to exactly when did they die. There are other and so forth. Now, there's no halachic requirement to mourn during this time. A lot of people are mistaken about this. It is a custom and not a law to mourn. And there are various customs of how to approach this custom, and it's not really even what we would call a binding custom, but rather a more or less a local practice that's also somewhat flexible, and it's really only binding if you belong to a Jewish community that observes these customs. It's not binding universally. However, it is certainly advisable if someone converts to Judaism. Obviously, you're going to join a synagogue and you should follow that custom that your synagogue follows, which might also be that you have the option of one or the other customs. Basically, there are 4 different customs of when to observe the morning, and then there are also various customs of how to observe the morning. But then again, obviously, there are those who don't observe any type of mourning because it's not really an obligation to do so, and no one should be shamed for not observing the mourning and so forth. So we'll talk first about the times of when we observe the customs of mourning. The standard custom in the Ashkenazic world is that there are 2 customs. At least that's how it's been practiced in America recently through most of the American communities, except for the Hasidic communities. The American Ashkenazic communities have decided essentially that because there were different customs in Europe, they're going to essentially say that one could every year pick one or the other, and it seems that there were communities in Europe that had this custom as well, that one could pick one year or the other. And so that means that either, meaning you could switch from one year to the other which custom you're going to follow. So meaning there's some people who will observe mourning from Passover until Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, so it's essentially 33 days of mourning. And then there are others who will say that the mourning, you're not allowed to mourn during the month of Nisan, so the mourning would begin on the first day of Iyar, and then it would extend to Lag BaOmer. You'd have a break, and then you would go back to mourning from Lag BaOmer until essentially either Rosh Chodesh Iyar or the Shloshis Mei Agbola, 3 days before the 3rd day of Iyar, the 2nd day of Iyar, or until Erev Shavuos. That's how that you could pick one or the other, and depending on the year you can pick, but everyone agrees that there's a break from mourning on Lag BaOmer in the Ashkenazic world. In the Sephardic world, certain aspects of the mourning are lifted on Lag BaOmer, but still haircuts are not allowed until the following day, what we call Lag BaOmer, the 34th day of the Omer. And then there's another custom of essentially observing at least some of the mourning customs throughout the entire season, which seems to be the custom of the Arizal, was that you would not get a haircut throughout at least the haircut part of the mourning, and we'll discuss that throughout the entire Omer, including Lag BaOmer, until Erev Shavuos, meaning you get a haircut Erev Pesach, and you get a haircut Erev Shavuos, and that's it. Which really, to go 49 days without a haircut, that's not a big deal, you know. You already got a haircut Erev Pesach. I don't know how many people get a haircut every month, it depends. And then the question comes about shaving, and whether, how one applies that. So, now, again, I really wasn't going to talk about this aspect of it, but again, I think some of my viewers might want to know some of the basic ideas of these customs, so we'll go through it. So, the 2 major prohibitions that are in effect according to this custom of mourning is to avoid weddings, and by weddings, people extend that to live music and dancing, and to avoid haircuts, and for people, men who do shave their beards, many extend it to shaving as well. So you have this phenomenon we call the sefira beard, that someone who a whole year shaves, but then this time of the year will grow a beard. It's what do they call that? Movember. I don't know even where that came from, and I'm kind of worried if it's something inappropriate. I don't know, but like that, men grow beards for November. I don't know. I don't know what that's about, but I heard of it, and so essentially that's kind of the custom that you see a lot of people in the communities where they permit shaving. The men won't shave; they'll grow beards for this time of the year. And similarly in the 3 weeks in the summer, which we'll talk about when we get to that. Again, in our Hasidic communities, the men don't even trim their beards. They might trim the mustache, but they don't usually trim the beard. Some people do, but it's generally frowned upon. But we do get haircuts, but we get very short haircuts. Other than the payas, we pretty much get the buzz cut all the way down, a zero buzz cut on the top of the head, and leave the payas. And so, like I said, you get that haircut on the day before Passover, and then again the day before Shavuos, and that's how we roll. But again, most of the Ashkenazi communities allow haircuts on Lag BaOmer, but most of the Hasidim do not because of the Arizal. And the only exception would be a boy who turned 3 years old between Passover and Lag BaOmer will get his first haircut on Lag BaOmer, which actually, thank God, and God willing, that's something I have in my house this year, which we never had before. A Lag BaOmer birthday, third birthday, actually on Pesach Sheni, a few days before Lag BaOmer, and so we're going to bring him, Mirz Hashem, to Satmar Rebbe in Monroe to get, the custom is the Rebbe is going to cut a few bits of hair. By such a Rebbe, you're not going to take a video, so we're not, whereas my oldest son, we had a local, Rebbe. We had the Zviller Rebbe, Zechron Levracha, was our neighbor, and it was very nice. And we have a video on the channel of my oldest son getting his hair cut by the Zviller Rebbe, Zechron Levracha, who was a big tzaddik, and we miss him very much. And then my second son, we have a video. I think both my first and second son, we have Rabbi Fishbein, Soll gesund sein, cutting also. So this is what we have here. So we're looking forward to that. God willing, God should protect us and preserve us to look forward to this special custom that we have. And of course, on Lag BaOmer, we're going to get in line, and that's what we're going to have. We're not going to be the only ones. So, but it'll be something fun and nice and different. God willing. K'nai Nahara. Now, there are people who say that you can't even listen to any music during this time, even recorded music, but I think that, to be honest, that is an extreme view, and if someone wants to personally accept that upon themselves, I don't see that as damaging. And I myself, I only recently have really gotten into listening to music more than I used to. But generally, they do allow a cappella music, and so you have this phenomenon of the a cappella recordings that's been going on for many years. But to be honest, if it's recorded, there are those who hold that a recording device or a recorded the playing of a recorded even a cappella song is essentially playing an instrument, that the speaker is an instrument, is a musical instrument, and would forbid it. Again, I think that that's an extreme view, and if someone wants to accept that upon themselves personally, that's their prerogative, as some sort of a penance or something. But there's no requirement to even, I would say, avoid listening to music on the radio or something. And then I've heard the lenient views to say that secular music isn't music according to halacha, and so it's permitted, which is a little silly, but it's so. Weddings also, many people do not conduct weddings during this time until haomer. They do have the weddings, and other people would say that at least no weddings between Rosh Chodesh and haomer. But on haomer, many people do get married, and before Rosh Chodesh. So I know the Satmar Rav was not Messiah Kedushin the whole time between Pesach and Shavuos, but if someone asks me to be Messiah Kedushin before Rosh Chodesh Iyar or after haomer, I'm not going to say no. And I just got asked to be Messiah Kedushin Mirz Hashem this Sunday, so that's where that's what it looks like, God willing. Again, we'll be doing. Obviously I also do. A lot of people know I do secular weddings for signing marriage license for any religion, and doing a little ceremony, and that is that's something that I still do. Obviously, even during Sefira, because it's not a Jewish ceremony. And actually, I'm going to a state that I've never been before to do this wedding on Sunday. Maybe we'll if we go, everything's still up in the air. But I was just asked now, so we'll talk more about that maybe during or afterwards, just to say hi to everybody. When it comes to these are the basics, and I think this video is long enough, so I think I want to make a separate video about these other customs that I wanted to talk about, even though I really have to get to my learning and other things. But I would like to still make a video about the other parts of the observances of Sefira that are perhaps a little bit less known, a little bit more obscure types of observances that we have. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you all later.